Happy Thanksgiving and welcome to the Hootie and JJ show. We're into basketball season, getting deeper and deeper each week. I think this is our fifth show, JJ. And we're on so many platforms. We welcome all of you from wherever you're viewing or listening and appreciate your response. We've had great response to the show, and particularly the last two when we've had Dave Odom, who's quite a character, and everybody loves Dave. And then the four Kentuckians last week, Drew Raves from Wahoo Nation, and it was a lot of fun connecting with all those guys again. Although JJ sees them, sees them or talks to them a lot more. It was a rare opportunity for me and for the rest of us to be able to go back and revisit some golden age of Virginia basketball with Lee Raker, Jeff Lamp, Jeff Jones, and Terry Yates. That was a blast, and thank you guys for all the feedback you've given us on the shows. We really appreciate that. Uh, he's Jeff Jones, former coach at Virginia, American, and Old Dominion. I'm Hootie. I've been around here since the beginning of time, I think, but I covered JJ, so that tells you how long I've been in Charlottesville. Uh, but thank you for tuning in. This week we're going to go back and revisit Virginia's weekend experience at the Greenbrier Resort, where they played in a ballroom over there against Northwestern and Butler, and talk a little bit about going forward after the holidays. They host Queens out of Charlotte on Friday. I believe that's a 4 p.m. game. And then next week, I haven't looked at, I don't have a schedule in front of me, JJ, but I think they play at Texas in the
I believe it's Tuesday at Texas,
yeah, I think that's
and
right.
then they go from Texas. I think they go straight to they go straight to Charlotte and play
Oh,
Dayton.
Dayton, yeah, that's the noon game in Charlotte. Could be a big day for Wahoo fans if Virginia's football team beats Virginia Tech this coming Saturday, because that would put Virginia in the ACC championship, likely against SMU, and an 8 o'clock kickoff in the Panthers Stadium down there. So that would be a quite a day for Wahoos. You go to the basketball game at noon against Dayton, and then football at night.
Should be able to. I would think, if the football team is playing in the championship game, should be able to sell out the the basketball game.
Yeah, you would think so. Yeah,
That'd be pretty cool.
that would be pretty cool. And Virginia fans, they have a warmness in their heart for Charlotte. They've had some great moments there in basketball and in football. They're 3-0 in bowl games down there, and then in Charlotte basketball, they've won the ACC title there and had some big moments. That's for sure.
Yeah. I apologize. You got the leaf blowers going behind me. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's the fancy setup we have here.
No, I don't hear anything. You must have some bulletproof walls or something in there. I don't hear a thing. But anyways, JJ, I think you said you went to practice yesterday.
I did.
What's new to the team?
They had a really good practice. I mean, this was on the practice was on the heels of about an hour long film session. So they were in there quite a long time. Obviously they were disappointed with the loss against Butler, but that it's one of those things. It's early. Butler's a really good team. You can learn, and that's the big thing. Sometimes even if you lose, it's okay. It's not ideal, but if you learn a lesson in the loss, and hopefully that's what Ryan's team will do. But they came out, had a lot of energy. They had Monday off to rest up physically, but they came out there and they got after it. They didn't go really long, but it was a very competitive practice. A lot of emphasis on defensively being tough, being physical. And I thought that in Greenbrier, both the game against Northwestern and Butler were extremely physical games, which you would expect. I mean, UVA is a very physical team. I thought they kind of got the better of Northwestern, not just in the score, but I thought they were the more physical team. I thought Butler came out and Butler was the aggressors and were the more physical team in that matchup. And ultimately, I think that really cost UVA not being able to match that aggressiveness consistently over the 40 minutes.
Yeah, I was surprised by Butler. I didn't realize they were that good and that physical, but Thad Matta did a pretty good job of game planning uh, his team for that, I thought.
They did, and I was talking to Ryan and Griff Aldrich, and one thing just watching on TV that I noticed is that three times, which is a lot in one game, out of timeouts, Butler had the ball and they came out and they executed and they got buckets in all three occasions. That's a well coached team, but a team that executes what their coach draws up for them. Some real nice plays. The one I remember was kind of a drift screen for the Biswack or whatever his name was,
Yeah.
the kid with the hair.
Get over there.
Nice drift screen, and they threw it over top. They skipped it over, and he got a nice 3-pointer right at the top of the key. But that told me that they were locked in. And Ajayi, I think, is the kid's name, maybe a transfer from Gonzaga, I think.
I think you're right.
He was, like, from a physical standpoint, he was the best athlete on the floor.
Yeah.
Some of the things that he did, both offensively and defensively, and Virginia never could get a handle on the game at the defensive end. And every game that I've seen, whether in person or on TV, at some point, Virginia has gotten a handle on the game defensively, and that allows their offense to get going. And they have one of those spurts. That's a strength of the team, I think, is the ability to, put together a spurt. Somebody on ESPN used to call it spurtability.
Yeah.
Either extending the lead or getting the lead and getting control of the game, in a short period. And you can't do that for the entire game, but Virginia has shown that ability. They weren't able to do that against Butler, and that's why Butler pretty much, had control of the game. There were a couple times where Virginia fought their way back, but they couldn't ever get over the hump because Butler just was resilient and didn't allow Virginia to have one of those 10-2 runs or something like that, particularly in the second half.
Yeah, that Ajayi kid was Ryan mentioned that it's the best, most athletic forward that they've faced this year, and I don't know if they'll face another one quite as athletic as him, maybe, but I don't know who it would be.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody, it might be as athletic. I doubt there's going to be anybody more athletic.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that exists. Interestingly enough, Butler's center, who I think did a really nice job. Kid had a big fro. I want to say his last name maybe was Jones.
Yeah, Drayton Jones.
He was at South Carolina State last year. So big jump for him in terms of level, but he was a physical presence. He didn't score a lot of points, but he got in there and banged and allowed Butler to more than hold their own. I think they won the battle on the boards by about 4 or 5. So
Yeah.
it just was it was a good team effort for Butler. I don't think UVA played awful. They did play their best. They had some defensive breakdowns. The one that stands out probably to everybody when Malik Thomas's got set the back screen and they got the wide open layup in the second half. That was kind of a backbreaker, if you will, and he didn't help. And it just was a glaring mistake. There were things like that again, Virginia, because of those things, weren't able to get over the hump. It wasn't through lack of effort. I thought they played really hard,
Yeah.
and at times played well and did some good things. It just wasn't enough against a Butler team that, at least in Ken Palm and I think the net, I think they're the number 4 team in the Big East right now. But I look at them based on that, and a lot of stuff can happen. But I would guess that that's going to be an NCAA tournament team. And for those that were watching on TV, you saw it. I don't know if people that were there when that game ended, you could see Butler's players, the emotional reaction that they had. That game meant a lot to them. That wasn't just another game. They were fired up. They looked at Virginia and knew that if they could somehow win that game, that would be a good notch on their belt. So you live and you learn. Wasn't the outcome that Ryan and his team wanted, but as I said, I think it could be a great learning lesson for them. And they watched a lot of film yesterday, pointing out the things that they've got to shore up. They're obviously going to try to get healthy Friday against Queens. But they're going to be having some road games coming up that they'll have to play at that higher level for longer. As early as it is in the season, I just think for most teams it's a little bit too much to expect them to play really, really well for 40 minutes, in November or early December. As you progress, you're going to get more and more of that. But against good teams, and Butler certainly was that, you're going to need to play better longer, and that's where that focus. It's more of a mental thing than it is physical. But that's where Virginia's going to have to make some improvement.
Yeah. I was over there for both games, and I was can't say I was surprised, but it was interesting to watch Butler's reaction after winning that game. It was like they had won almost like won a national championship or something. They were so fired up. They were hugging and dancing and high-fiving, and their fans were fired up, and the coaching staff was fired up. I didn't realize that Butler was that good, and they quickly changed my mind. Like you said, they were extremely physical, and I think they knew they had to be to win that game. And uh, the Jai kid we were talking about scored 17 points and had 14 rebounds, and Finley Bizjack, 25 points, 9 of 18 shooting. He was hard to deal with. And they had a couple of the other guards were really quick, I thought, and were able to drive down the lane and create some havoc. And for Virginia, Tess DeRitter, he almost got his head knocked off early in the game, and no call. I think if I recall, there was no call on that, and he was bleeding throughout the game. They had to come out several times for Ethan Saliba to try to stop the bleeding.
Ethan actually told me yesterday at practice that it was a pretty deep cut, and there just wasn't an opportunity. It's not like they could have done stitches during the game or anything. And Tess must be a pretty tough kid because he got whacked pretty good, but he hung in there, and and that's just that's what you got to do. I tell you, a bright spot I would think is shoot, I'm blanking. The transfer from UC Irvine.
Jakari?
No, UC Irvine.
Devin Tillis.
Tillis.
I was impressed with him.
The fact that he was able to play as well. I mean, he's been out for what, three or 4 weeks, whatever it is, and to come in there in that situation, and it's not like he dominated. He didn't score a lot of points, but he looked very comfortable out there. That's certainly a good sign for Virginia to have him back. And if Tess does have to go out, for an extended period. At least you've got a proven guy like Tillis that is ready to go again. That was certainly a bright spot in over the weekend. Uh,
He looked like a bull down in the paint, man. He would turn his back to the basket and back his defender deeper into the paint, and then take him with his right on. And one time he faked him with his right and had a really nice move. I don't know what the terminology is for it in basketball, but he went back the other way and for a easy layup.
Yeah, so we refer to it as Barkley. And if those folks are old enough can remember Charles Barkley, he'd get it at about 15 feet and kind of back his way down. Both Tess and Ritter are very good at that. I think Ugo and Grunlow are they try they're not quite strong enough yet to have the effect that the two foremen have. But Tillis and Tess are big strong guys, and they're good and they're creating those low post opportunities. Even if they don't catch it in the paint, they can Barkley their guy and kind of get in there, force the defense to decide are they gonna help, and then that they're willing passers in there and they can kick it out for a three, or are they going to let their defender play them one on one? And I think you see that a lot more in college basketball. And it's in the NBA. I mean, it kind of trickles down, and it puts the defense in situations where they've got to decide. They got to pick their poison, so to speak.
Mhm. Yeah, that was impressive, and yeah, I think he'll help them a lot. Uh, you mentioned Ugo Ugana Oyenso. He had 8 block shots and on 2 possessions he had back-to-back blocks twice. That was impressive.
Jerry, I tell you what, I was shocked at a couple of them, that he was able to block them as far away as he was, and
Yeah.
and the one that they called goaltending, probably was goaltending. It was close. Initially when you watch it, you say, "Oh, that's definitely goaltending." I'm not so sure. I mean, it was, but it wasn't an automatic.
Yeah.
When they showed it in slow motion, he's so long. The arms and his body elongates. You see that with the block shots, and when they throw the lobs up to him on the pick and roll, finishing way above the rim. Those two guys, between Grunlow and Ugo, their rim protection is elite. I mean, it's really really good, and teams are going to have to, the old adage, you got to take it to them. Well, yes and no. I mean, you got to be smart. People learned with Ralph Sampson, that the idea of taking it to him, that didn't work really a whole lot.
No.
That's why Ralph's freshman year, I think I'm right when I say this, he had a ton more block shots than he did in subsequent years because people just were smarter. They weren't bringing it in. Ralph was smarter about which ones he went after. He was more selective. But more than that, it's like a shutdown corner in football. A lot of times quarterbacks, they just avoid that guy, so they don't end up with great interception numbers just because they don't get the opportunities. I think that's going to become the case with Ugo and Grunlow, because they're just really big and really long, and they've got a knack for blocking shots. So you got to adjust. You got to play the odds, and taking it in there to them isn't going to get it done.
Yeah, Thad Matta kind of broke us up in the press room after the game when he said, yeah, we shot 43% and the big guy blocked 27 of them. And it must have seemed like it to Thad, that's for sure. A friend
It's
of
nice after you win, you can make jokes, right?
mine, yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
guessing Ryan probably didn't make a whole lot of jokes, and
No, no, he was pretty subdued, that's for sure.
that's just the nature of the beast.
It is. Um, a friend of mine who was over there and just in the gallery said he was sitting beside an NBA scout for the Northwestern game. I don't know if the guy came back for the other game or not, but uh, he, my friend asked him. He said, "Who are you here to see?" And the scout looked at him and said, "Who do you think?" And it was DeRitter. And while they were talking about Virginia, the scout also said, "Man," he said, I can't believe how quick that Chance Mallory is." He said, "That kid is unbelievable." So these guys already got scouts looking at him. That's wild.
Well, I would guess that Virginia's going to have scouts, maybe not at Queens, but NBA scouts at pretty much every game.
Okay.
Tess, obviously, I've had one NBA scout already tell me that Ugo was UVA's best NBA prospect because he can block the shots and he can roll and they can throw the lob. Grunlow's going to be a pro guy. So their front court, is going to be getting a lot of attention, and Chance, I don't see him going to the NBA, anytime real soon. But
Yeah.
I mean, how impressive is he? I mean, he's so he's tough, he's smart. He can bang shots. He'll get down in the stance and guard, and obviously he's at a disadvantage with his height, but his strength and his ability to move his feet and stay in front. He's a factor defensively. So, um, and he had to play more and well against Butler with Dallin Hall.
Foul trouble.
Getting those three fouls and just never getting into any real kind of rhythm.
Yeah. Yeah. Chance, he's an interesting kid with he plays with such a chip on his shoulder, and he's always people have always uh, I guess felt that he had a disadvantage, but he didn't feel that way, and he's learned all kinds of ways to manipulate his body and take different angles, and his aggressiveness is, like you said, is off the charts, and he's tough. His dad was a boxer, so I'm sure he picked up some of that toughness from his dad, Joe.
He's been banged up, had different things in the preseason, and he doesn't miss a beat, doesn't miss practice, doesn't miss games, and knock on wood, I'm not trying to jinx the young man, but
Oh yeah,
I'm real impressed with the whole package, but his toughness. I mean, I love that. I know Ryan and the staff, loves that as well, and it's not just a physical toughness. He's mentally tough. It's
yeah.
it really doesn't do a whole lot of good if you're physically tough, and you're strong and all that kind of stuff. If you don't have the mental toughness to go with it, the mental toughness is every bit as important as the physical toughness, and I think Chase, has that in abundance.
Yeah, it's been interesting watching their games thus far. With sometimes it seems like Dallin Hall, even when he's not in foul trouble, he's a good distributor, but he seems sometimes reluctant to shoot. And I think Ryan has probably gotten on him about that a little bit from time to time. And um, I guess the Northwestern game when Chance had such a tremendous production. Ryan mentioned after the game that, we've got this guy with all this energy on the bench, and if he's sitting there and he's looking around and he's seeing that the guys on the floor aren't taking advantage of the situation, then he's going to come in and be even more ultra aggressive, and that seems to be what he did in Northwestern, and it's almost like firing an Elon Musk rocket when he comes into the game.
Well, I mean, the depth is certainly a strength of UVA's team. To
Yeah.
have Chance, who we've talked about a lot, to have uh, uh, gosh, Ugo coming off the bench, to have Devin coming off the bench, to have Jakari White coming off the bench. That that's a good group right there. I mean, those guys individually and collectively, I think can really provide a lift, and it might be, you know, Jakari, knocking down a three, or Chance doing something, or Ugo blocking shots, or Jakari is one of their best on ball defenders. He can really, and when they score and they get in their pressure, he can really exert a lot of just nose on the ball pressure, making that ball handler work, bringing the ball down the court. So that depth, and it's not just depth, it's quality depth, right? And
Yeah.
they're building that, and then at times, if need be, they can bring uh, Gertrude, Isaiah Gertrude, off the bench. He provides something different. Some great athleticism. Um, that's going to pay dividends, I think, for Virginia. Going forward throughout the course of the year, because everybody had, you got injuries, you got foul problems, guys might be be in a little bit of a slump, whatever it is, and hopefully you've got guys that can pick up the slack, and the fact that Ryan has got that and he knows that, I don't watch the NBA a lot, but I had more time last year and I watched a little more, like the New York Knicks last year. They had a really good year, but by the time they
Right.
got to the playoffs, same thing with the Denver Nuggets. By the time they got to playoffs, if you're playing a 6-7 man rotation, certainly in the NBA, 48-minute games, but even in college, that wears on your starters. And Ryan has the luxury of having those guys that he can plug in, and there's always the motivation when players are out there in the court. They can't get complacent because they know that there's a guy sitting there waiting, just chomping at the bit to get out there on the court. And if if you do have a slump, like I said, you might not be starting anymore. It
Exactly.
might make that adjustment in the starting lineup. So, and again, that's competing with one another, not against one another. That's the key when you've got depth like that. Everybody's cheering. We always would talk about when you get to the point where you are cheering as much for your teammates' success as you are for your own. If you're as excited for your teammates' success as much as you are for your own, you're in a good headspace, and that's a real positive for a team.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good point. Uh, let's talk a little bit about Johan Grunlow. He played pretty well in the Northwestern game, not so much against Butler. He had ended up with 7 rebounds and 2 points, one of 4 field goals. Missed his only three-pointer, but yeah, was that part of the matchup with Jai, I guess, because that guy
No, Ajay was more a matchup for the 4 men.
for the
And then what happened, the way they play the ball screens. If Ajay was involved in a ball screen, a guard will switch onto him, and he took advantage and tried to play bully ball a little bit with one of the guards. He was just bigger, stronger, faster, and he tried to drive them. But it wasn't by design. If Ugo or Johan were guarding Ajay, that wasn't a matchup that UVA was looking for. Sometimes it just happens in the
right.
course of the game, but no, it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. I think
Yeah.
Butler's physical play, and the referees certainly let him play. We won't
Yeah, they
dwell on
did.
the
Although
officials,
they
but
did call a lot of fouls.
what, yeah, it was an impossible game for those guys to referee because Virginia was trying to be physical. Butler was very physical. Um, a lot of body on body, and a lot of contact, not just in the paint, but outside. So, I don't want to be too critical of the officials, but at times that, I think they kind of let some stuff go that did have an effect on the play. But again, both teams were going after it so hard. You can't, I don't think, point to one or the other as having an advantage.
Yeah.
But I think that physicality, um, Johan's going to have to figure out how to deal with that. Um, in overseas, he played against men, so it's not like he's never been in a physical league before. But um, he, uh, uh, he still needs to get stronger. But until that happens, he needs to know. It's like we were talking about with Chase. You got to find out. Okay, maybe I'm not quite strong enough. How do I compensate? For that.
Yeah. I agree. Uh, Malik Thomas came alive in that Butler game, and they needed him to. He scored 24 points, 9 of 17. Was pretty aggressive. They need him to score on a regular basis, right?
Yes, I mean that's what he does, and he's talked about one of the reasons he came to Virginia. The big one was to be able to win, but also to become a more well-rounded player. At San Francisco, they needed him, they wanted him, they asked him to score. I think he wants to be able to do more than or be thought of differently than just as a scorer. And so he's working real hard on that, but yeah, he's a scorer, and he can at times go get buckets. The thing that he's got to figure out right now, and everything's an evolution. He tried down the stretch, um, he tried to kind of take over and do some stuff himself, and he wasn't successful. He took some ill-advised shots, some tough shots that if they go in, that's great, but they're not high percentage shots. Um, and the bottom kind of fell out for him in the last. He missed 4 free throws in a row.
Yeah.
You could see on TV, the camera focused on him. Literally, he was talking to himself after missing those 4 free throws. So he'll figure it out. It was a bad stretch and an otherwise good game for him. But I'm going to say the last 8 minutes or so, maybe even less than that, when Virginia was trying to fight back one more time, I thought he tried to do a little bit too much. And so, in answer to your question and your point, they need him to score, but they need him to score within the team framework, of what everybody's going to do, because they got other guys, and so hopefully, nobody has to take really tough shots. No one guy. And if the defense is loading up on him, then got to get somebody else, and hopefully they can they can get an easier one.
Yeah. It's never fun to lose, but as a coach, I'm sure you took those circumstances and were able to use that as a great teaching moment, which I'm sure Ryan did yesterday, as you mentioned, with the extended film session and then pretty intense practice. Uh, Coaches can get their players' attention pretty easily after a loss like that, right? And then you can really hone in on what the problems are and how to fix them.
Absolutely. No, it's interesting because I mentioned yesterday's practice was real intense. It wasn't because the coaches weren't out there yelling, and
Yeah.
it's because the players came out there ready. I mean, they know. That's when you got a good group, a competitive group, when they feel bad after a loss, right? They're not pointing fingers, and it's like, okay, that wasn't good enough. Um, we have to be better, and I think that's what you saw yesterday in practice with the intensity. I want to say I was reading this morning an article. I want to say it was Kelvin Sampson, but I can't swear to it. But he talked about how he was pissed off. after they won against Syracuse. I think it was, but he saw how disappointed and upset his players were for the way they played. Right, it wasn't the
Yeah.
standard that Houston has become accustomed to. Um, and he said he felt so much better after seeing how much they cared, because that told him, right, that communication is a great thing and it can happen in so many different ways, but that communicated to him he didn't have to get on their ass, right,
Right.
or certainly not nearly as hard. If it was no big deal and they, yeah, we beat Syracuse, we didn't play great, but so what, right? If you see that as a coach, you got to light a fire. You got to make them understand that it matters, right? It
Yeah.
matters how you play, whether you win or lose. It matters how you play, and when the closer you can get, as a team to playing every possession, every half, every game, you know, like you're trying to win. You're not just playing the game, right? You don't just go out there and just play, right? You want to win the possession. You want to win the half. Some coaches divide up the games in 4 minute segments, and you want to win each 4 minute segments. There's lots of ways, but you play to win. When that Jim Mora, John Mora, Jim Mora, the
I,
Indianapolis coach,
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, who was
was
it?
that him or was that Denny Green? It was one of those guys.
It was
You
one.
play the game to win.
Yeah.
One of those guys. It was
It was. I can't think of it. I can see him, but I can't think of his name. It's not those
yeah.
guys. It's the guy that went on and coached at Arizona State, and then
Oh, Herm Edwards
Herm
with the New
Edwards.
York
Yeah,
Jets.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, you play the game. Yeah, there you go. That's a good one.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, so I mean that's what every team is striving to do. Butler came closer to that the other night than Virginia did, and that's why they won the game. It's like every possession matters. That's tournament basketball. And I'm not talking about going out there and playing with, your fists clenched. You don't want to do that.
yeah,
But you're not just running up and down there. It's not a pickup game, right? You're playing for fun, but but there are stakes, right? And everybody's, you know, you're playing to get ready for postseason play and to get into the tournament and then to do damage when you get in the tournament. That starts now. That doesn't start in conference play. You know, there's experimentation. Coaches are trying different lineups and they're seeing how many guys can play and what line. That's still going on. But when you're out there on the court, right, you're playing to win. And that's why everything that Ryan has his team do is competitive, right? The punishment, the loss might simply be doing push-ups. One team beats the other. And yesterday, the white team, which is the non-starters, and a couple of things beat the blue team, which was the starters. And they get to celebrate, and the blue team, gets to do some push-ups. But everything, you know, everything matters, and that's the lesson that Virginia's learning, just like everybody else, right? And we got to play every possession. And Thad Matta had to feel good about that with his team, because again, they weren't perfect, but they were closer to it in that particular game than was Virginia.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Very impressed with them, and yeah, you're right about all that. Um, we're getting down toward the end of the show. Let's focus a little bit away from the team. And Virginia got was received a $5 million gift from Drew and Kate Parker just a couple. It might have been yesterday or 2 days ago. Uh, that's that's pennies from heaven, JJ.
That's a pretty good day. I tell you what, losing sucks. There's no way around it. But getting a $5 million gift, the day after a loss, or whenever it came in, that that softens that blow a little bit. I would think. I don't know. I've never been at the receiving end a $5 million gift, but
Me either.
that's great. Obviously a very generous uh, uh, thing for those donors to do, and in this day and age, I mean, it matters. Uh, it's not it's not the it's not an automatic, right? Getting the money, having the most money or whatever, but it's the price of admission. And if you want to be competitive for a national championship, you've got to have support like that. And it comes in a lot of different, you've got the Players Era tournament going on right now, out in Vegas. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, each team gets $1 million for participating.
I think
But
you're
then
right.
if you make the semifinals, you get another half a million, and you win the championship, you get another million. And teams, and it's crazy. And if determining tiebreakers, right? Who advances for the semis and all that. Point differential is a significant part. So you have people literally running up the score. Gonzaga is up 40 on whoever they beat. I mean, they smack somebody, and the starters were in with like 2 minutes to go, and they were up 40, and they want the money.
Is that
I,
good?
I,
Is
I
that
don't
good
know
for
I
the game?
agree with how they set it up, but
Yeah.
it's a reality. Hopefully maybe next year, because I think they're doubling the field next year. They're going to go from 16 this year to 32. Maybe they can figure out another way, a better way of, you know, figuring out tiebreakers and who advances and all that kind of stuff. But that money, and I kind of got off topic, but whether
Oh,
it's $1 million in Players Era or $5 million from the generous donors, um, that matters in today's world. And you hear about donor fatigue,
yeah.
out there, and it's a very real thing. So to have somebody to believe in you and support you in that manner, I know that everybody at Virginia has to be really, really appreciative and grateful.
Yeah, no question about it. And yeah, I hope they find another way too. It's like getting style points in college football where people are trying to impress the college football selection committee by running up the scores. It's just
Yeah.
not good for the game. Um, what just revisiting last week for a moment. What was your favorite part of getting together with those guys? I know you talk to them all the time, but having them together for sort of a mini reunion on our show, that had to be fun for you.
Oh, it absolutely was. I mean, I love those guys. I mean, they're great friends, and we've had great memories and great time together, and that bond still exists. Anytime we can be together, some of it's the same stories that are still funny, you know, 30 however many years, 40 years later. Um, uh, but then new things come up, and it just brings a smile to my face, listening to those guys, and listening to those guys, Lee and Jeff laughing at Terry, because
Giving him grief.
it's easy to do that. That was one of our favorite pastimes with T Gates. But we didn't have to use the buzzer on any of Gates's stories. Sometimes you got to put a timer on some of his stories, but he was on his best behavior. But as I said, I love those guys. We're going to get together out in Santa Barbara. Jeff lives in L.A. Lee's daughter is a student at University of Cal Santa Barbara, and so in February we're going to go out there, the four of us, and get together. So that'll be fun, and be even more stories. And I'm sure there's exaggerations, but those are, you talk about camaraderie, and that. Those guys are wonderful, and we were lucky to have other great teammates as well. We have that bond of being all from Kentucky, but Ricky Stokes and Ralph, and Othell and Tim Mullen and Jimmy Miller and Dan Merrifield. All of those guys. I'm sure I'm missing some, but um, we had a really really good group of guys, and we were very fortunate in that regard.
Yeah, no question. That was a real fun time in my career was covering some of those teams too. All you guys were fun to deal with for the most part, and worked well with the media, and uh, it was just a special time in Virginia basketball. It was a blast.
Well, I think this can be a very special time, for Virginia basketball as well. And you
Yeah,
obviously had the Tony Bennett era, but Ryan is, every day kind of making his mark, and they've got a group of really nice young men. And
yeah,
it's one thing that's been interesting in the limited time that I've been able to be around them in this day and age of everything being transactional. Um, and players coming in and not really knowing, about the traditions and not knowing the history and things like that. Um, Ryan has really made sure that these kids are mindful of the history of Virginia basketball, um, and the specialness of UVA. I mean, he talks about it all. He ended up practice yesterday talking about, nobody owes us anything. Every time we take the floor, we should be, grateful for the opportunity. Um, I wonder how many college coaches do that with, all these new players coming in from everywhere. That it's hard to have an appreciation, but I
yeah,
think these
yeah.
kids do. Um, and I say kids. I mean, I always say kids, but what Tess is like 24, 25, whatever he is, and
Yeah.
but
They still
still,
kids to us.
yeah. Uh, but still, I think that's kind of cool, and hopefully they can have a a taste of that kind of special connection. We're talking about the guys from Kentucky and our teammates. That bond that's there. I know every summer I have my former players from Virginia get together. Last summer we had 40, 50 something people with wives and kids. It doesn't. It's not going to work that way too much in the future, but hopefully they can get a taste. Right, these guys that are coming together for just 1 year, and building. It's almost like speed dating, but speed teaming, if you will.
Yeah.
Building a team, and having that family connection kind of thing. Hopefully, they get that. It's just for a shorter time, right? And I think that's something that Ryan and his staff really work on. Really value and are trying to make that that connection amongst all of them.
Yeah, I was impressed that early on he brought in a bunch of former Virginia players like Ralph and Rick Carlisle, and I don't remember who all was there. I think you were there, I think, and
Well, the funny thing is, Jerry, he didn't bring them in. They wanted to be there,
yeah,
right? I mean, that's
yeah,
that's the thing. Ryan, embraced it, but Rick wanted to be there, and Ralph and Ricky and Jimmy and myself and a bunch of others, and then obviously you've got the greats Barry and Barry Parkhill and Wally Walker that
yeah,
they're around all the time. Ryan very much embraces it, but I think everybody wants to wants to help out, or I don't know if help out's the right word, but support
right.
however they can.
Yeah, I think that is unique. I would be interested to see how many other Division I head coaches do that. Couldn't be many, I wouldn't think.
No, I think the ones that it gets a lot of publicity. Obviously, Duke, and they call it the Brotherhood and all that kind of stuff. I'm not a big believer in labeling things or branding things. I think I like when they happen organically and they just are.
Yeah,
But Duke certainly has that. I think now Carolina, has always had that. going back to Dean Smith, that was something that they really cultivated.
Right.
But as you said, I'm not sure that there's an abundance of it all across the country.
Before we close out, how's your former team, the Monarchs, doing down at Old Dominion?
And they're struggling. They kind of hung in there last night with Villanova. They were never really a threat to win the game, but they hung in there. I was afraid Villanova, they got up. I thought they would run away and hide, so to speak. But at least ODU kept the score respectable. They've had a tough stretch. It's a really really tough non-conference schedule for ODU, and they haven't figured out. Unlike UVA, they haven't figured out how they want to play. They don't have an identity right now. Hopefully they can get healthy and figure some things out and really come together and form that identity. But to this point, they haven't been able to do that. I think they've got they've got Maryland coming up, at Richmond, at William and Mary. It's not an easy road for them. So they're going to have to make sure they stick together, right? And they keep their composure and even if they going through a tough time, it can tell you a lot about the individuals and it can tell you a lot about your team. And I think that's the real key for ODU is can they stick together through a really tough non-conference schedule and be ready by the time conference play comes along, be healthy, be on the same page and figure out some things. They've got a lot of new players as well. It just hasn't happened as quickly for them as it has for UVA to this point.
Well, they'll certainly be battle tested, that's for sure.
No doubt about that. No doubt about that.
Uh,
And so many of their games are on the road. I mean, gosh, uh, just playing at home, a couple games is going to be really really welcome for Mike Jones.
yeah, I can imagine. All righty. Well, that'll wrap up this week's show. We really appreciate JJ taking some time out of his schedule and giving us and sharing great insights into Virginia's program and the college basketball world and coaching. And we wish you all out there a happy Thanksgiving. Same to you, JJ, you and Danny, and all your family. And we'll see you here next week to talk about Queens and Texas, and maybe previewing Dayton a little bit, and might have another special guest lined up for next week's show.
Yeah, I apologize. Everybody just got stuck with you and I this week.
Uh,
You know,
I think people love. I think people love hearing your thoughts on the team because you have a perspective that's unique and your background, your knowledge of the game, and I think they love hearing your insights and the fact that you get to go to practice and see things that the rest of us don't get to see. I think only adds to the program.
I
Uh,
better not say anything that Ryan doesn't like, right? He might kick me out of practice.
that's right. He'll ban you at the door. All right, folks. Did you say you got anything else, JJ?
Well, no, Jerry, I just want to wish you and all the listeners, watchers, whatever, very happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully, everybody can have a great day and enjoy family and friends.
Yeah, we have listeners and watchers because we're on so many different platforms, including YouTube. Make sure you check out our YouTube show and subscribe to it, and you can see us there, and then so many other venues, platforms. I don't think they're video, but they're definitely audio. So, and including JerryRatcliffe.com, where you can find all your best Virginia sports coverage, particularly heading into this weekend against Virginia Tech football. Thanks, and again, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you all have a safe travels all around the country, and we'll see you back here next week. So long.